I'm going to share my exploration with Open FGA. Open FGA is an open source fine-grained access control framework maintained by Okta, and it is inspired by Google Zanzibar, right? Now, why this framework is is critical or important in the agentic AI era, right? So OpenFGA provides fine-grained access control on a resource. What I mean by that is, so let's say a agent has access to multiple documents, right? But the users who are accessing that agent may not have access to all those documents, right? Based on the user role, some users may have access to 2 documents, some users may access to 3 documents, some users may not have any access to user document. But when different users use the same agent, how does the agent ensure that the users access privileges are used to access the resources or to access the context required to create an output, right? That is where I see OpenFGA playing a role, right? So in this demonstration, I have created a RAG pipeline where many users are using the RAG pipeline, but based on the user role, for example, if Bob asks a question, what is our Q1 revenue, the RAG engine may retrieve the top 10 documents, not all documents that Bob has access to, but the OpenFGA, this is where, because OpenFGA uses a relationship based access control, and it uses a model, relationship model, to say that if this user is, so in this model what I did is I said if a user is part of a department, the documents that are part of the department only can be retrieved by or used by the user, right? So the OpenFGA then checks, can Bob read each document, right? So this becomes my authorization gate. I then filter only the documents that Bob has access to, and that is what I send to LLM response, to the LLM, right? Now this is through RAG engine. Now think about how it is applicable in when I use MCP servers as well, right? So when a MCP client does an inbound authentication to an MCP server, it is a broader authentication, right? Because that authentication says that you are allowed to use the MCP server, but within the MCP server, I can have multiple tools, right? How can I further say that, okay, within this MCP server, these are the 3 tools that you have access to, right? So before I go to the call the tools, right? If I bring the OpenFGA server in between, right? OpenFGA framework, the OpenFGA can take the list of tools and only filter the tools that the user who triggered the agent has access to, and then outbound authentication only calls those tools which the user has access to, right? So let's see a demonstration of this RAG engine pipeline, right? Now, first I'll show you this OpenFGA, the relationship based model, how we can create it, right? So I used the OpenFGA public playground where I created a model like this, right? So let me go to the developer mode, it will be much clear. So here the model is that, so the document is the resource that I want to protect, right? So here what I'm saying is, any member, if a user is a member of a department, right, then the relationship is department reader. That means it can read, because department reader is again connected to can read any document where the member is a part of the department, right? So for example, let's take Alice, right? So Alice is part of department engineering, member of department engineering, and department engineering has a document called engineering spec. Now in my RAG engine, what I did is I used some synthetic data document, and the document IDs are employee handbook, engineering spec, marketing strategy, HR policies, board report, right? Now the engineering spec, I said, is part of the department, engineering department, and the relationship is department reader, right? So Alice, since Alice is part of engineering department, member of engineering department, Alice has department reader access. So that means Alice can read the document. Alice is also a confidential reader, and the confidential reader has access to board report, right? And then there is a public reader, the employee handbook, any user can read, right? So now if I, in my RAG engine, if I go to my RAG engine and ask the question, if I log in as Alice, right? I'm logging in as Alice, right? So all Alice, as we said, has access to public documents, engineering documents, and confidential document. What is our Q1 revenue and valuation? If I click on this, the answer will be created from these 3 documents, because Alice has access to all these 3 documents. Now if I ask the same question to Bob, since Bob is part of marketing, and in my, actually let me go back to the auth, let's see Bob, what Bob has access to, right? So if I look at Bob has access to marketing department. Bob doesn't have access to any confidential document. So any document that is part of marketing, and the marketing document, the marketing department document is the marketing strategy, right? So Bob will have access to marketing strategy and the public reader and the employee handbook, right? So if I look at the output now, the marketing strategy and the employee handbook, right? These are the 2 that Bob has access to, and these are the 2 documents that was used to answer this question, right? Where does this filtering happens? The RAG engine retrieves everything, but the Open FGA model is now filtering those documents, and those filtered documents are sent to LLM response. Let's look at the last one, the Charlie. So Charlie is part of HR. So let's look at Charlie's department. So Charlie is HR department, right? And HR department has HR policies. So Charlie has access to HR policy and the public document, right? And the employee handbook, right? So if I ask this question as Charlie, we'll see the HR policy and procedure and the employee handbook has been referred. Now how it is managed in the code, let's look at the code. Now this code, I'm not going through the entire code. I'll only go through specific part of the code which has this logic. So the pipeline is the RAG pipeline, right? So here, so as I said, I used synthetic documents. These are the document IDs. I embedded these documents into a local ChromaDB. Now in the pipeline, when I'm in the run RAG query function, I'm passing the user and the question, right? And then from the Chroma store, based on the question, I'm getting the top 10 results into the candidate documents, right? Then I'm getting the unique doc IDs, right? This is where I'm calling the FGA client dot batch check, where I'm passing the user, passing the relation, right? Can read relation and the document ID. What is happening in the batch read is that it is now calling, right? It is calling the API of the Open FGA. I'm using the public Open FGA API check function, and it is saying the tuple key is user, relation is scan read, and the object ID is the document ID, right? So for each of the document, it is, and the model ID is what I showed right now, right? So for each of the documents, it will find out like it will return whether it's an allowed is true or false, right? So this check is going to for each object, basically for each document, it will give me the results whether that document is allowed for that user or not, right? So when I finally call the batch check, right, the allowed IDs, I remove all the documents which are not allowed, right? And those documents I finally send to the LLM, right, to get the response, right? That's how we can use Open FGA, which is, as I mentioned, is a relationship based fine-grained access control framework. And it has the potential to solve the problem of user delegated access to the agent, right? So that's all I wanted to show as part of this recording. Thank you.